Okay, in this part of our video we're going to replace the trunk floor in this 1968 GTO. As you can see, the floor is pretty rusty and it does have some holes in it. It probably could be repaired, but because this is going to be a concours restoration, we just chose to replace the pan instead of trying to repair it. Now, underneath this floor pan, of course, there's braces that hold this floor pan in position. And you want to make sure that when you cut this pan, that you do not cut the floor braces that hold the pan in place. The floor braces also are there for the gas tank support, and that's where the gas tank bolts to the body. Now you can see I've drilled some holes, and of course that's where I'll use for the starting point and use my air-operated hacksaw, and that those holes are also in line with where the braces are underneath the car. So what I'll do is I'll put the saw and saw right down alongside the brace that's underneath the car and cut these panels out. Now I want to show you also the bracing underneath. You want to make sure that you do not cut the bracing that's under the car. Now that we're under the car, you can actually see the floor support that's under the body that runs down the full length of the trunk to the back of the car. Now this panel here is just a brace itself where the frame actually bolts the body to the car. You can see that's where the frame bolt would go. This brace here in the center is the gas tank brace. Actually there's two, and then the frame that runs down the other side where you bolt the frame in is there. Now when you cut this, you make sure you do not want to cut these braces. Alright, now we're going to go back up to the top side of the car and we'll start cutting out the trunk floor. Now, using the holes that I cut in earlier with the drill, you can see there's one here, one here, one here, then up in the back, all the way across. Now where these holes are, the braces run in the middle. And you can see the floor is indented here where the braces run. Now that indentation is actually the water runoff. If you get water in your trunk, the water would run down around, follow these valleys in the pan, and you could open the drain plugs and drain the water out of the trunk. But what I want to do now is I have an air-operated hacksaw, and I'm going to cut down the edge of that brace. I can follow the design in the trunk floor to make my cut. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and cut the rest of this out, so when we come back there'll be 3 sections of this trunk floor that will be already cut out. Now after we cut the trunk floor out, then we want to remove this extra trunk panel that's attached to the braces. You don't want to have any of the old trunk floor in here at all. So when we come back I'll show you how to take the extra metal off of the top of the braces. Okay, now that we got the trunk floor cut out, this is just a rough cut. You can still see that the braces, these are the braces in the middle, and then the braces are still here on the sides. Now, what you want to do next is lay your trunk pan in the trunk. Now that we've got where the spare tire hold down and the jack piece was, out of there, the trunk pan will lay down in on the floor pretty tight. It's tight right up against those braces. But we still want to take that other sheet metal that's on those braces off. Now what we're going to do now is scribe around this new floor pan so we can get a general idea in what's remaining of the old floor pan where we want to cut. Now you want to scribe just to give you some kind of a guide. We're not going to cut it out all the way up to where we scribe it. But like I said, this is just to give you a general idea of where the pan is fitting on the original floor. Now that we've got that scribed in there, we'll take the floor pan back out. Get that out of the way here. All right, now I don't know if you can see very good in here, but there's a line that goes all the way around where that floor pan's set. Now what we want to do is cut the floor out the rest of the way we want to stay about a ½ an inch below and to the side of that scribe line. So we're going to go ahead and trim up along the back side here a little more and get that cut out, and when we come back then I'll show you how to remove this metal that's going to be left here on these braces. So we'll go ahead, like I said, we'll get the rest of this trimmed in, and then when we come back we'll show you how to remove this metal on these braces. Okay, now we got it all trimmed, and as you can see I used a cutoff tool to get it, and you can actually see there's our original scrape line, and I used the cutoff tool and cut it down to about 3/4 of an inch below the scrape line. Now that's where I'm going to leave that. I'm going to weld that piece now in there, so there'll be 3/4 of an inch of the original metal underneath it. You can also see I took the cutoff tool and cut through the layer of the trunk floor we're going to take off, and didn't cut it all the way through, so it went through the bracket itself, but now that's broke loose from the bracket. I did the same thing on the back side also. Now I want to show you how to take the rest of the trunk pieces out. We need to take these 4 sections out before we put the trunk pan in. And what I do is I take, normally what you would do is you would use a spot weld drill and drill through. You can't see the spot welds on the top because the trunk's still rusted. Now you can see them from the underside, but I don't want a drill coming up because I want the underside of that pan, the braces underneath, to still look original. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a grinder with a welding grinder on there. That's not a piece of 36 grinding disc. This is an actual cutting wheel. So you can feel underneath where the spot welds is. What you want to do is grind on top. I'm going to grind on top of the original spot weld. By doing that, then you can just take the screwdriver and pop the spot weld out. So you want to do that on all of this so you can get this off. So when we put the trunk floor in, then it'll sit right back down on this that we originally did from the factory. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting all that out, and then we're going to grind the area all around the trunk and get ready to start so we can put the new trunk floor in there. And when we come back, then you'll be able to see with all these pieces gone and with it all being ground down. So we'll be back here in a couple of minutes and we'll show you that. Okay, now you can see that we've got all the metal trimmed off. We've got everything all ground down and it's ready to be welded. We took and we deburred everything so there's no burrs on anything here, because you're going to be working underneath this after we put the pan in. May put sealer on that. You definitely don't want to get a burr in your finger running it up underneath these pieces of steel. So now we're going to set the trunk floor back in. And you can see we ground the trunk floor too all the way around the edge. Ground it all down, trimmed it around the edges, trimmed it in the back here. And what you want to do now, once you get it into place, you want to take and put a couple of pop rivets in it to hold it down. So let's see here. And where you want to put the pop rivets is in the area where you can't see them, because you're going to grind these pop rivet heads off and fill that hole in a little bit there. This is just to keep your panel held in place. Just to keep your panel held in place, keep it from moving around. Let's put one in over here on the other side. Well, I'm going to go ahead and pop rivet this panel all down, and we'll be back after it's done. Okay, now we got the trunk floor pop riveted down in, and as you can see, I went ahead and I drilled holes approximately 6 inches apart where the trunk floor is going to be reattached to the under braces, and you want to start welding those in first before you do any welding on the sides, because the trunk floor will shrink a little bit. That will pull, and if you weld the sides first, it may pull the trunk lid or the trunk floor off of the braces, which will make it harder to weld. So you want to weld the bracing first before you weld the edges of the floor pan. So we're going to go ahead and start welding this in with the MIG. Pretty simple process. I mean, we're pretty much getting down to the end where we'll be filling the edges of the trunk lid and getting it ready to prime. So get the MIG welder hooked up here. And like I say, you want to start welding the floor braces in first before you do the edge, because if you were to weld the edge, it would pull the panel up and it would probably lift it off of the braces. So let's go ahead here and